All right, this is it. This is the final rush to the end. Yeah, I like that. Brad, a round of applause for you sticking it out. I appreciate that. This is where you know the people are serious when we get to the very end and you're still in the trenches. So I appreciate that. Our next panel is on the timeline, so I'm going to be very quick in the introductions. I'm going to introduce Bridget Chan and have Bridget Chan come up. One of our key partners is New America. So if you've seen below the banner, New America has been a critical partner of ours since the beginning of the FIU New America taking this on. Bridget from Share the Mic at New America has been a thought leader in this space. And so Bridget, I know you're on a time crunch, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, panelists. Thank you all for sticking with us till the end. I like to think that this is the pre-game before the conference ends, so hopefully it's going to be a good time. I have a fantastic panel with me today, and we're going to jump into some issues regarding HR and how to strategically leverage HR operations. But I want to set the scene a little bit before we jump into the conversation. As you heard, the theme through the NICE conference is about workforce resilience and how we prepare the cybersecurity workforce now for challenges in the future. The world is facing a cybersecurity shortage, and we are also in an age where artificial intelligence is inspiring innovation and also triggering very real anxieties about job displacement and about the future of work. So in the face of these worries, I think this panel is a fantastic opportunity to think about what are some actionable things that organizations and companies can do to strategize for the future. And so I want to start with a rapid fire question for all y'all. I would love for you to start with your names, what your organizational affiliation is, and your response to the following statement. There is a future where companies and organizations completely rely on AI to assess skills and readiness for cybersecurity roles. So let's start with you, Rob.
That was a yes or no question, right?
Yes.
Okay, just double check. So, hi, I'm Rob Lee with the SANS Institute. I'm the Chief of Research. I can't talk right now. Yes.
Okay, hi. I am Katie Boudreau, and I'm the Director of Cyber Talent at MasterCard, and emphatically, no.
So I'm Michael Alicia. I am the CHRO of Trellix, and the answer is AI definitely has a role to play, but no, it will never supplant the actual human in the process, right? Because how can a human, how can a piece of machinery or algorithm understand judgment, understand the culture that you have in an organization, and whether or not someone's going to fit in that culture?
Michael cheated.
That's
It was
okay.
yes or no.
Well, it was kind of like a maybe.
I mean, that's the thing, is that this whole conversation is going to dig into that gray area of maybe, and I think Michael's answer is really revealing about how there is no yes or no answer to this question about AI and workforce.
You just disagreed with me.
I mean...
I just said yes. I said period. That was it.
And I would love for you during this conversation to give us a counter argument for that. So I think that this that kind of sets the stage for this conversation, that it's going to be really nuanced. And I think the conversation today will be really revealing to folks and hopefully give you some actionable questions to ask yourself and strategies for how to bring that back to your organizations. So first, I'd like to ask Katie, and then Michael, you can answer after. So MasterCard and Trellix both run these massive operations that oversee hiring cybersecurity talent. Just to set the stage for folks, can you both explain why partnering with HR teams is critical to cybersecurity and why organizations of all sizes could benefit from focusing on their HR operations for the future?
Absolutely. So at MasterCard Tech, we bring in a ton of software developers. So of course our recruitment teams are very skilled at hiring software developers. But when you take someone who's used to that and who has years of experience with that, and you plug them into cybersecurity, failure. Because you end up with very awkward interviews. Been there, done that. We're built differently. And so what I've ended up doing with the Cyber Talent Program is, with a concerted effort, we've built a bridge to HR and to our talent acquisition teams, especially globally. And we've opened the doors to that conversation, and we've given them a place where they can come directly to me if they don't understand a job description, or they've had a miscommunication with a hiring manager. So they can come to me and we can have a conversation about that, and I can help them. And having that constant place where they can bring that to me and opening those doors has really been a game changer for us. And we've also added to our job descriptions, which some of you may have heard yesterday, we've added the NICE framework to our job descriptions. And that's been a tool for them, so they can go back to the NICE framework. They can read what those work roles mean and read those descriptions. And so that's given them a tool as well. So is it tools, is it education? It's both. So, but really ultimately for us, it has been that trust and that openness that has created that exactly what we needed, and having that cyber talent program to build that bridge is exactly what we needed.
Michael?
So I think, for us, one of the things that we worked very hard in doing is integrating our talent acquisition members with product and engineering hiring managers. So that's one. Two, the cybersecurity market, the industry as a whole, is evolving so rapidly that the job descriptions are constantly being updated. And for us, we are a cybersecurity company, right? So there's a difference between someone who would go into, let's say, threat intelligence versus a software developer versus a product engineer versus a sales engineer, an SE. And so each of the talent acquisition leaders are working directly with those hiring managers, and they're evolving it as they go. A perfect example of that is that we've changed our hiring processes to be more skill-based. Because if you take a look at, let's say, I'll go back to the threat intelligence group, wouldn't it be great to have someone who's slightly more technical but actually has a degree in psychology that can understand not just what is happening, how it's happening, but the why it's happening and what's it targeting. And we found that that's been really successful.
That's great, and that's actually a fantastic segue into the next part of the conversation, which is focusing specifically on hiring and how HR identifies skills. So as we know, there's a lot of tech products out there that kind of help to either automate or accelerate the hiring process and identifying those skills. And so I would love to dig into how that's being done. So Michael, I'm gonna punt it back to you. My question is, when we prepared for this panel, you touched a little bit about, at a very high level, about how AI has helped Trellix to identify those skills and to quantify those skills, and as well as in other business areas of Trellix. And so at a very high level, how has AI helped to streamline workflows and provide additional data and metrics? And maybe on the flip side, what are areas you've learned to be wary about AI, depending on AI?
Sure. So what AI has done for us is actually shorten the cycle from the time we identify a candidate to the time we hire and they start. Because it takes a lot of the more rote things and it does it very quickly. And in fact, 15% of the time has been reduced by using AI. So it sorts through resumes, it matches up qualifications, it provides quick identification of certifications. Those things which we can do, but would take longer for us to do, AI can do in about 10 minutes. Right? It would take a day or two to go through 500, 1,000 resumes, and it does it very quickly. And so the next stage would be then speaking with an individual. The process from there is what you would normally have, right? You look for skills, you look for cultural fit, you look for something that AI cannot yet find, which is intellectual curiosity. I'll go back and I'll use the threat intelligence group. Something is happening on your network, but all the systems are down. But it looks like it's something that should be happening. AI would overlook that. a human would say, hey, that's kind of weird. Why is that happening, right? So that kind of thing is something that is really hard for AI to do, but as a human, you can actually do. Now, beyond that, once we get a person in, we do use AI to understand maybe gaps that the individual may have, because we are hiring based on skill as opposed to 100% experiences. And so AI does figure out, what are the learning courses that they can take to get to the next step. The secondary thing it does is it helps match mentors within the organization. So now they've got a buddy system that is selected based on experiences or where we think that individual can go. So that's how we use it.
Great. And I think the next question I'm going to skip over to Rob, actually, because you mentioned something about soft skills. And that's been a theme that's been repeated about how you need to find that nice balance between technical and soft skills. Rob, you being at SANS Institute, you're kind of in the skills area of things. And so as you're thinking about kind of the evolving workforce and the evolving needs of the cybersecurity field, what are the skills that you see are necessary for workers to possess, whether they be technical skills or soft skills, in your perspective?
That's a really good question, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because at SANS, obviously we do a lot of technical training, but living in different environments, all the way through my career, and talking to folks out there and currently working, a lot of CISOs are trying to get this security culture that is clearly defined, easy to follow, and not only permeates through the technical workforce you have on the security side, it's also protecting your standard HR, finance, the standard departments. So security has a kind of a challenge. First of all, they're not the fun people in the organization. They're the organization of no, organization of restriction, organization of let me lock your laptops down, and we're monitoring you. So when you end up talking about like the soft skills, you go tie back, there's two folds here. Number one, you have the environment around the entire organization. You're trying to say, help us out, help us help you type mindset. And the way I create an analogy for this is that if you're doing security culture properly, it's like you're at a university being able to walk back to your dorm and you feel safe. And there's blue lights everywhere. This is the type of thing. If it's proper security culture, someone could go do their job without having to worry about, did I click on the wrong thing, period. But the opposite side is we're seeing a lot of security teams out there are being challenged by their managers, their senior level technical people who kind of grew up through the technical ranks that don't have those graduated soft skills. And it accidentally produces the toxic workplace environment. And we see this permeate, especially in security teams, to where people, what I call rage quit, and you hear them, and what happens, and they said, I can't deal with this environment anymore. Part of it is, and this is again something to think about internally, is that even if someone does their job correctly on the security team, say, hey, good job, you stopped the intrusion. You stopped the bad guys from stealing the Death Star plans and saved the Rebel Alliance from all the threats on the planet. Awesome. By the way, you failed because you allowed the intrusion in the first place. There are no badges and hero monikers you get for doing your job correctly as a security team. CISOs are still criticized. How did that happen? How did we let them in? And this permeates down to security teams, and this is one of the reasons it's not only the soft skills from the managers, it's soft skills from the entire organization, and realizing that those people who are sacrificing their nights and weekends to protect your organization don't have medals that are awarded from the military, and that affects them on a daily basis, and it permeates through the team. So it's like soft skills across the board. How do you teach that in an organization to properly manage their teams correctly? It's kind of one of those things you don't really think about. It's like, have I ever gotten a hero medal for doing my job correctly in this field? And I can guarantee the answer is no.
Actually, we give out challenge coins.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
We do for things like that.
Awesome. This is good. You're one of the few. Military does not. They are sitting there thinking about that. How do we award? They have badges, like very clear. Now, how do you get the award? Good job of you stopping an incident from happening. It's like not something they have in their cookbook.
Yeah, and I think Rob and Michael combined, both of your responses touch on something that I think is really important. I think we have these broad categories of what soft skills are and what technical skills are, but then underneath both of those, it just seems like there's like a great number of different skills that people can have, and a lot of people who are out there looking for jobs don't quite know how to quantify it or have really struggled to like write about it in like, I don't know, a resume or like a cover letter or when they're like asking folks. So this next question I want to ask Katie. One of the challenges that I hear from a lot of job seekers, especially those that are entry level, is job requirements feel impossible to meet. There's just a number of different certs and a number of different like years of experience that maybe folks don't necessarily feel like they have. So from your vantage point, how much of these job descriptions could be explained by a pressure to be ready for an unknown future? Is there pressure for organizations then to compete for talent?
So I'm going to answer the second question first. There definitely is competition for roles, but it's more in the mid-career. It's in that 5 to 10 years. And that is for very niche roles. So 7, 8 years ago, it was for cloud. It's because we all needed to be in the cloud yesterday. And we were fighting for very specific cloud experts in certain cloud environments. And we couldn't find them because we couldn't afford them. So we were being outbid for them. So I can only imagine how the rest of you all felt. So now it's AI experts in certain AI things, right? So that's for the mid-career. So yes, we are fighting for them. But for entry level, I can only imagine how they're all feeling, right? Because they're seeing job descriptions that have these super high certification requirements. Or they need 3 years experience. Explain that one to me, right? I was at a job pitch where I was pitching, our careers to some entry-level folks, and I actually heard one of the other pitchers say for entry-level that they needed 3 years experience. Excuse me? And then they tried to say that internships counted. My internships are only 10 weeks. How does that work? 10 weeks does not equivocate to a year's experience. So I was just really confused by all of that. So make your job descriptions actually realistic for entry level. Make them more about you need to have an understanding of X, Y, Z, or you need to have just a little bit of a limited experience in this type of a tool or something like that. We need to give them an open door. We need to stop shutting the door to them. When we're opening, so if I'm requesting 4 mid-career roles, instead of doing that, why don't I request 3 plus 2 entry-level roles? That's a way for me to create those roles for those entry level and stop shutting the door for them. This is my soapbox, right? I'm always constantly telling my hiring managers, stop asking for those mid-career. Maybe ask for 1 or 2, but ask for 3 junior as well, because it's the best way to build out your team and bring those junior folks in. And I even got into an argument with one of my coworkers over it the other day, and he's like, why would I want to do that? I want somebody to stay in the role for 3, 4, 5 years. I don't want them to leave after 2 years. I'm like, why not? You want somebody who wants to move on and move up. You want somebody who's going to challenge you and make your team better, because the younger people are the ones who are going to come up with the ways to make the job easier. They don't want to do the menial tasks. They're going to be the ones who come up with ways to make things faster and more efficient.
Fantastic. I would have loved to hear that like 5 years ago.
Can I add one more bullet to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're talking about the junior folks out there, you definitely need to follow what she just said, because of one factor is that they're going to adopt AI technologies at a faster rate and try to reduce the menial tasks, and then that is going to make them mid or senior level people. A lot of the folks in the mid or senior level people are slower to adapt to the AI-based technologies. So you take a much less of a risk hiring someone junior and kind of giving them a little bit like, hey, incentive to go learn AI and figure out a way to automate something, then you'll probably get adoption from senior to mid folks. That basically was one of your points, is that they're going to innovate, and I totally agree with that.
Michael, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, for us, that realization came about 4 years ago when we just couldn't get anyone through the door. It was super competitive. So we created, we called it the Emerging Leaders Program. And we got entry-level, really smart people. We started off with about 6. We forced the hiring manager to actually compete for the 6 with roles. And they go through a period where they do some rotational programs. The program is up to about 50 people now. And it had three things that it really drove. One, it set a different benchmark for the folks at work, right? Because they see these folks coming in, they have the skill which is adaptability and flexibility, right? Another thing that AI will never get. Just saying. And then,
I didn't say anything.
Secondly, right? Secondly, it actually kept our wage rates down because we hired folks that were smart at an earlier stage in their career, and we moved them faster, 3 times faster than the rest of the organization. So eventually they took on roles which would have cost us almost double to have someone that have had that experience come in and do it. And look, it's changed the landscape for us.
That's actually a great segue into the next part of the conversation that I would really love to have and really focus with the audience on, which is this idea of retention. So retention, if you don't know, is a term for the ability of organizations to keep talent at their organizations. Don't correct me, because I am not an HR person. So I find that oftentimes there is an art in order to find the right combination of incentives to bring, not only bring folks into work at your organizations, but also just to keep them there. So this next part of the conversation, I would really love for the panel to kind of give us some insight and strategies on how to do that, and perhaps impart some wisdom for the audience who is looking for those workers and hoping to reduce costs by keeping them in the door. So I'd love to start with Rob first. So during our planning conversation, you mentioned how in every workforce development conversation, you get peppered with questions about AI. So can you speak briefly about some of the concerns that people in cyber are expressing, in particular its impact on jobs, and how do you see organizations being able to alleviate those concerns?
So the retention, I'll just hit upon that just real quick. When you end up taking a look at retention, almost everything, and again, everyone in here is an acolyte, so I don't need to worry about briefing you on this, but the organizations need to adapt that, just like mandatory vacation, healthcare, that people in your technical workforce get guaranteed training annually, and however you define it, week-long training, that you end up being able to do. Whenever costs get tight, that goes, but you never see costs get tight that people are not allowed to do vacation or people lose their health care. And if they do, it's because the RIF or something like that might occur. Training has to be guaranteed, because that's the way folks like you and I survive and be able to maintain our workforce. The second thing that I see a lot of organizations struggle with is that, in particular with junior individuals that are extremely talented, you'll bring someone in at a certain salary level, and then it's saying, hey, they jumped in less than a year to the experience of a mid, or in some cases senior, is because they're that talented. And then you go back to HR and you say, so we have this open position who's a mid position, and that increases their salary by $30,000. And HR will come back and say, that is way too large of a raise. By our policy here, we're only able to do a 10% raise max. So you're literally telling the individuals, like, guess what? You need to quit, and then you need to reapply for the mid position, and then we could give you that position. These type of hardline rules are affecting organizations left and right when you're trying to build talent. And there's a lot of talent out there that really come out. There's a unicorn that happens in every single team at least once every 2 years. You need to be able to say that person has just jumped to mid, and it could be a $30,000 salary increase, but also in order to retain the individuals, the number one thing that you need to be able to maintain is your training budgets. Now your AI side, everyone's worried about AI taking your jobs. Hopefully, I think there's some further conversations on that, so I want to, I'll touch upon that, which is, the growing AI, concern. I'm more of looking at it from very positive outlook. AI is going to be able to instill creativity in individuals to be able to solve really high technical problems that they've never been able to solve before. If you have someone who's a really talented analyst at a security operations center level, and they potentially see a problem like you're saying, is like, they're not going to be able to reason, AI is not going to be able to reason. You're exactly correct, not exactly. The individual might be able to say, hey, I've never encountered this problem before. Guess what? I can now go on Replit and saying, here's my problem. can you develop a solution that might be able to analyze these 3 data sets and connect it to ICS, this thing over here, blah, 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 and I have a feeling there's an adversary in there, and it's like, here's how you're gonna code it. And it'll tell you step by step by step how to do that. That creativity is unlocked with AI, and that is going to empower organizations to be able to do more with less.
I think that that's actually a great point to something me and Katie talked about, which was how utilizing AI is also going to be a skill. So Katie, would you like to kind of expand on that point?
Yeah, so like we talked about at lunch yesterday, a quote that I heard a few weeks ago was, if you're not utilizing AI, you will be replaced by someone who is utilizing AI. And that was actually my deputy CISO, Dr. J, who said that. And that just resonated so much with me, because it's not that you're going to be replaced by AI. It's that you're going to be replaced by someone who is. And so for us, you know, it's not about force feeding someone the training for AI. It's really about giving them that autonomy. Do you want to go learn about AI? It's available to you, right? That education, like you said. It's all about giving them that opportunity to learn. So we have given them that autonomy. We've given them the opportunity to learn, but we've also given them the opportunity to, for career mobility. And so we want to make them choose their own path, sort of like those choose your own adventure books when we were kids, right? I don't want to force feed them anything. I don't want to go tell them, you have to go take a week to train. I want them to choose their paths. I want them to choose it. Because if they're choosing to take that time to do that, because we're all given Friday afternoons, we have Flex Fridays. So you have the opportunity every Friday to take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to be training, or to catch up on a book that you needed to finish, or say you have some emails that you set aside that you need to respond to, or whatever it is. You have that time on Fridays. That's when I choose to, at least once a month, do some training to catch up. That's what I choose to do. Other people may choose to log off. That's their opportunity. That's their choice, you know? I don't agree with it, but that's what they want to do. So everybody has a choice, and we've made sure, at least within the Cyber Talent Program, so anybody who sat through my session yesterday knows that we've built things for them. We've built them curated training pathways. We've built them a mobility dashboard. So they have it at their fingertips. It's up to them. What do they want to do with it?
So what I hear Rob and Katie say all together is that part of retention strategy has to do a lot to do with continuous learning, giving folks opportunities to continue to hone their skills or learn new skills, and especially as we think about how tech is going to continue to innovate, and there's always going to be new products and new technologies out there. You want to make sure that the folks within your organizations are ready to tackle those challenges whenever they happen, and that goes into the soft skills, you know, creative thinking, problem solving, teamwork. But one of the things that we did not explicitly talk about that I would love to ask Michael about is this concept of belonging. So during the story spotlight, the speaker talked a lot about finding community within cyber. And I think that that's one of the things that we don't talk about, is that human connection within the industry that will keep folks there. So Michael, I know when we talked a little bit about, like, in preparation for this, you talked a lot about belonging, and you had a lot of fantastic points. So I would really like for you to talk about how building community is part of your retention strategy, and broadly how you've leveraged technology, even AI, to facilitate that.
Sure. I mean, for us, you know, at Trellix, we talk a lot about this concept of soulful work. And we use it both internally and externally. Externally, we use it to create community around our CISOs. Internally, what it really means is that you're doing work that matters. What we do in this industry is good, right? We're the last line of defense between a bad actor and your grandmother's pension. It's really clear. And so I think when I think about recruiting and how do you keep people engaged, you give them a mission and you give them purpose. So that's one. The second thing is that, you know, we embrace them with other affinity groups, people like themselves, right? There's a whole body of research that talks about the fact that people do not leave organizations if they have a friend at work, if they have a best friend at work. And it's really not best friend, it's a confidant. So we create networks, some people call them ERGs, some people call them affinity groups, where we encourage our leaders as well as participants as well as allies to join, right? The third thing we do is very much what you do, which is we create learning paths that allow folks to then get sort of almost internally certified to be able to do other things. Year to date, we've had over 10,000 self-directed learning hours. Our organization's about 3,500 people at this state. That's quite a bit of hours. And most of it comes out of the product and engineering organization. And then finally, not lastly, but finally in this case, we also do a lot of training with our managers in the technical space around how to identify burnout, how do you move folks from feeling that, you know, they're in a hole and there's a little dot and they don't know how to get out of it. And a lot of it is just being aware and mindful that, you know, these are high-stress jobs. And in our world, right, we are a cybersecurity company, so we hire for trust, right? You need to trust us with your systems. And we embed that trust and inculcate that as part of our culture with everyone we hire. And that also translates to the leadership.
That's actually great. And I would love to, before we pivot into thinking about kind of the more concrete advice and actionable advice that we could leave the audience, I would love for all of you to kind of have a really brief conversation, starting with Katie, and then everyone else can join in, about, again, going back to training. So you mentioned about training this soft skill about how to identify burnout. That it requires a level of like emotional intelligence, but there's also the other part of training for hard skills, right? Training like the programming and the technical skills. And so starting with Katie, I would love to get your perspective on what are the strategies that you've used to alleviate concerns around AI and automation. So Michael talked about the soft skills and like learning that emotional intelligence of identifying burnout. Katie, are there any other like skills that, yeah?
Around AI and automation? No, I mean, no?
And that is A-okay.
Not really. We're really just working with our third-party providers to make sure that if our people are asking for something, that we are giving them what they want. So if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I am really interested in learning more about this, I go directly to my learning and development team. I go directly to my third-party providers and say, this is what my people want. Find it. If you can't get it to me now, get it to me tomorrow. I need it as soon as possible. And if you can't get it to me tomorrow, get it to me next week. So they know what we're looking for, and they're developing it for us as soon as possible.
Rob, go for it. You have thoughts.
So going back to the AI equations, because I did say yes earlier. So this is really hard because you're sitting there saying, okay, how future looking can you potentially be with this stuff? And, you know, go back to an analogy everyone's probably kind of very aware of at this point. So there are car brands and vehicles out there that have had no fatalities over the past 5 years. And the reason for that is that you end up having crash safety detection capabilities in these cars that are able to detect a person crossing a sidewalk in front of you, or detects, hey, you're swerving off the road. And this is where, from a AI perspective, what is really occurring here, especially when we start taking a look at, what is the next couple of years going to look like? The AI agents and everyone, like, I hate the term, because there is going to be reasoning that's going to be associated with it. Now, is it going to be correct reasoning? They're going to have to do benchmarks against that, and I have my own doubts on that. But you will start having managers manage agents like you're managing people. And that ends up in of itself being this one little thing that people have to click on for a second here. Now I'm going to tell you what's going on in the industry. Moderna. if you looked at what the headlines for Moderna over the past 2 weeks are, they merged HR and IT. And people are kind of like, what the heck are they doing there? And the reason they're doing it is that the managers are managing both technical agents as well as human beings. And so when you end up sort of trying to say, well, what are the requirements that I want to send to HR that this agent is going to do, that's no longer just a human thing, it is a coding thing. And so when you're trying to manage people managing agents, which are doing like crash detection, things that sooner or later are going to be replaced, which I go back to cybersecurity, who's managing your firewall now? Some of you are saying, what's a firewall? That was an actual training class we had at SANS 15 years ago. We don't train firewall, 502 was our class back then. Things evolve because those jobs no longer exist. So the same thing is going to occur, and I'm saying, this is why I say yes, is that there are certain things that will be replaced with AI. There are certain things that we're not going to be used to, is that those soft skills that you're talking about of how do I manage both an agent and be able to communicate what the agent's supposed to do and measure it. Are you doing a good job, agent? This is a question a lot of us are going to have to face, just like we're managing the humans. It's like, what are the human doing? Is it a good job or not? Because that's one of the reasons Moderna, whether you agree to it or not, I'm kind of skeptical, but there's always going to be that first mover. We could have a conversation about Duolingo and Klarna and all these other ones too. But at the same time, we are looking at, and within the next 2 years, advancement's going to happen quickly, where some people are going to be drastically threatened by saying, hey, that was my job, and there's going to be an agent doing the reasoning for it. But just like those first people probably saw a tractor in the field when they're farming, saying, oh, wait a minute, we have 100 farmers out here and that tractor on the field nearby. How many people are involved in farming today, like less than 1% of the planet, where 250 years ago, 98% of the planet, that was your job. And so does it mean there are less jobs on the planet because we have tractors? No, it just means that the jobs evolve in what they're going to be doing. You're going to have a lot more agents working in your network, which is going to empower you, but at the same time, you have to have this concept of how do we manage those things, which will have some limited reasoning. I'm not fully convinced you're going to have Terminator, coming out against us. But you end up looking at Lucky Palmer. He's convinced of AI autonomous weapon systems, and I'm like, okay, that's a little bit drastic. But at the same time, he's convinced. And we're like, well, whether or not he's going to be successful with Anduril or not, this is the kind of thing we have to look at the industry, not just cybersecurity, of where they're potentially implementing this stuff. And for those of you in HR, do a case study on Moderna real quick and see what they're actually doing, and then take a step back and say, okay, how is it applicable to cybersecurity and what that path forward is going to look like?
So we actually have in our products agents that are operating autonomously. It is here, it is happening, and sometimes it gives us back data that we don't quite understand. And I think that's actually, to go back to my original point around humans, that's what we're interestingly curious about, right? For us, making sure that we look for people that are adaptable and flexible, that's the core skill you're going to need. Because the technology's here, it's going to drive change, it's going to evolve, and we need people to evolve with it, not against it.
Yes.
She said yes.
Hooray! So I think, oh, sorry, did you have something?
No, I was.
Jokes in the panel. Love to see it. And as we start to wind down this conversation, I just wanted to leave the audience with a few tidbits from the experts, some actionable guidance that you could provide them. I'm just going to start with Rob really quickly. What is your advice to cyber professionals or tech professionals in general in order to meet the needs of the moment?
So I hesitate saying this one, but I think it's the reality. For those of you out there looking at the different frameworks from NICE and from across the board, we need to take a look at, we're certifying humans under the same frameworks. We need to start taking a look at how we're certifying agents. Is it going to be able to test the same benchmarks that you're testing humans against to be able to pass and get the certification? Will there be a certification that you're going to be giving agents? For those of you thinking, wait a minute, I never heard about this before, Google made an announcement 6 weeks ago that they have an agent out there that they're trying to throw at all these security problems and have the reasoning like a human. So the concept here is going back to this, if they're going to do that reasoning, the way that we're going to be looking at this path forward is everyone in here is looking at frameworks to be able to test skills. Can they pass the same thing that a human does? And if the answer is yes, we need to start considering certifying agents that are running around your network as much as the humans running around your network.
That's a nice persuasive point. So the next piece I want to ask Michael, and then we'll have Katie. So not all organizations represented in the room have the same resources that a Trellix does or a MasterCard does. And so I would really love for you, what are some scalable solutions or even just basic questions that you would advise leaders to ask in order to search, hire, and ultimately retain the right talent?
Great. First of all, Google's our client,
Oh,
just for clarity.
aren't they everyone's?
Yeah, they're using our agents. So, look, not every company has the resources to do maybe what we can do because of the mission and the size and scope. But what I saw here at NICE was kind of interesting. The collaboration between private and public was critical. I would urge smaller businesses that don't have all the resources to engage with academic institutions and start developing relationships there, because they can funnel early in career talent. They can actually help you stay contemporary, which, by the way, in cybersecurity is one of the hardest things to do. So I appreciate the work that SANS does in other organizations. And by doing that, you're actually able to keep your businesses on the right path. Or there's really small things to do that don't cost a lot of money if you're a small business. And by the way, in organizations that do have the resources, I would recommend you make relationships with academia as well, because they can help funnel talent to you. They can help, you can help them develop curriculum that then comes back to you pre-trained.
Katie?
Yeah, so you don't have to be a big organization to build a strong culture, and Rob hit on that earlier. So we have this thought process of talent always on. If you have a good culture, your people are your best recruitment tools. If they love their job and they love what they do and they love the organization they work for, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their networks, they're going to share those open roles with the people that they know who are going to be a good fit for that. So they're going to share that and they're going to put it out there. They are your best recruitment tools, and they're going to be a part of that entire recruitment wheel. And so that's that thought process, is we put that into their DNA, and so we've built a strong culture. You don't have to be a big organization to do that. Make your people like their jobs, make them like where they are at, make them happy. Not only do you retain them, you help them become a part of your recruitment toolbox.
You will be happy.
Yes, you will be happy, they will be happy.
Everyone leaves happy.
Everyone's happy.
And with that, I want to thank the panel for taking the time to share their expertise and their wisdom. And Brian, I'm going to hand it back over to you.